And it's John Reed, and I'm back this time with Ram. How you doing?
Good, John. I'm doing very good. Thank you for spending time with me.
Oh yeah, we've had a vigorous couple of days here, and you had a lot to say about AI direction and more things to the analysts assembled here. And now we're at the end of day two. We're trying to make sense of it all, and you're going to help us. So we talked a lot about Zoho's ambitions around infrastructure as well as AI,
Right,
including the data piece.
right.
Can you just share with those who weren't able to be here some of what you were talking about there? Because it's quite interesting.
Absolutely, John. So we are delayering things.
Yeah.
What
The
did
delayering of the stack,
yeah,
right?
delayering of the
What
stack.
does that mean to the average person?
Right. So last year we were talking about model with so many billion parameters, models that tie into the agent platform and all of that. But now that has kind of got commoditized. You are spoiled for choice with the open source world. I mean, one week open source models are best, next week proprietary models are best, and the cycle keeps moving really fast. But then there are a lot of constants in the system that doesn't change. The database ecosystem that helps you set your context, the hardware that lies underneath, which of course all of us are using NVIDIA GPUs, but those little optimizations that you can do to get the maximum efficiency out of the GPUs that we have. So this year we wanted to focus on that. We spoke about our database engine, our long term. I mean, database is a boring problem, right? AI is cool, but database is boring. So we have built a foundational database engine that plugs into our AI layer. It combines four different layers, which is a columnar store, a graph database, a distributed engine, and finally a database that can store objects. So now all four of these is bundled into a single Zoho DB, and it elastically scales up, scales down. So the way we have done is it is essentially abstracted from the end user or from the developer. So the developer need not write specific code to operate on a graph DB, to operate on a GPU DB. No, the GPU is also accelerated by database. So this essentially the direction that we are taking is going further levels down to extract the maximum of today's modern AI and LLM capabilities. And that really helps us offer value, which is what we want Zoho to be known for, the value that we bring into software. We don't nickel and dime customers. We don't let our customers pay for our AI systems. So the value to do that, we keep going lower and lower into the stack.
Databases might be boring, but lowering the costs of AI infrastructure management is anything but boring because that eventually gets passed on to the customer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it does.
Yeah.
I don't care how you rationalize it in your quarterly reports, it does. Uh, so, Zoho's making the case that you have a different approach to AI. So, what is it? What's different?
Right. So we have been investing in AI since 2011, like our databases. I mean, all of these we play the long game, and we as a company we've survived 30 years. We're very successful. We started shipping software in floppy disks, and now here we are, what we are doing. And we've seen multiple waves over the past. I mean, we saw the dot-com crash, and then we saw the whole rise of the internet, and then we saw mobile. Now we are at the verge of AI. Now there's a lot of noise, but then again, going back to the constants, as I say, we our strategy, to put in one word, we call it right sizing models with the right context. Now, not everything is a large language model problem. There are certain aspects that you will be able to solve with simple ML solutions. Your random forest algorithm, your linear regression is more than enough to solve an anomaly detection. Number-based forecasting engine or a graph-based finding the root cause of what happened is more than enough for most use cases. Bring in an LLM just to get a summary. So the LLM front ends an AI question that the user submits, translates that into requirements. Then there are a bunch of agents, there are a bunch of APIs, there are a bunch of ML systems that work in tandem to give an answer and send it off to another LLM, and the LLM puts that into a sentence for a human to understand. So this, by right sizing these models, we're able to keep our costs low. We're able to bring in explainability to these modules. We're able to treat our privacy policy very seriously because these smaller models need much lesser data, and all of this tie back to customer value.
Yeah, and you and I talked about this during our interview, and I'll probably write about it, but I think the explainability part's really interesting because that's about bringing in the context and then being able to show where it's from because these models aren't really good at telling the user how they derive the decision. But
Right.
if you engineer the context right,
Right.
you can do it. And to me, that gets us to the final component of your value proposition because you've addressed things like addressing infrastructure costs, and I think contest helps with accuracy and relevance of output, but there's also trust. And I think you're heading into the trust part now because what we heard from your customers, I think, was that you've earned a certain type of trust with them.
Right.
And now your challenge is to repeat that. And one of the quotes from one of your customers in healthcare was, we're getting something different from Zia than we are from, say, a ChatGPT search, for example, where we don't like the results or don't always trust the results. So do you want to elaborate a little bit on that part?
Yeah. So this is what we call contextual intelligence. By setting the right context, again, not setting too much, not setting too little. At the same time, setting the right context that is available to the person who is using the LLM or the agent becomes super important, because what we have done is a full stack approach. Now our AI evolves over our search indices. So basically, an agent that I built will only be able to access data that I have access to. Now, let's say we both work for Zoho. I will not be able to have my agent summarize your emails, your chat messages, but because I don't have access to them. So because of this, privacy is baked into the system. The hierarchy, I mean, it knows who my reporting manager is. My reporting manager has to approve my travel request, my leave request, my asset request, and all of that. Now that information, that meta information, that context is carried forward across systems because we have unified processes, because we have unified all the data in the system. So now the setting the right context reduces a lot of problems because one, privacy is taken care. There is an user level privacy, there's an org level privacy. Like I said, you don't want to read my data, I don't want to read your data. And then there's an org level privacy where I have spruced up this model based on the data in your organization. I cannot use it to do inference for my organization because that's your business secret. So we deploy a model A into 10 different customers. It evolves into 10 different models the next week because each model is spruced up with their own data and is never used to do inference for other customers. So this is how we see it going. Context, privacy, all tied together helps us reduce the hallucination aspect. Make sure you give the right context, and smaller LLMs also really help here because, within a CRM system, you're not going to plan a vacation. You're not going to ask for a healthy eating chart. So that tying together context, right sizing the models helps us nail our AI strategy.
When you and I talked earlier today, you talked about how there could be a real value in sort of looking at a deterministic workflow, for example, and maybe figuring out some agentic pieces that bring more value to that workflow.
Right.
And some of the fine tuning, frankly, from a process perspective that goes into that.
Right.
And then I think you derive some impact that you can then start duplicating as you learn how to do it. But how do you sort of help customers along that journey? Because inside of Zoho, you're getting the hang of what that looks like. How do you help customers do that?
Absolutely, John. I mean, one mandate we have within the company is to imbibe AI into all our processes, because only when we use it internally, I remember the days in 2011 when Zoho gave us, all of us, a choice between an iPhone or iPad. The reason was you get accustomed to the touch interface of a smartphone, of a well-designed UI, and then that gives you a hang and that helps you build better products. The same thing we're applying to AI today. We are trying to inculcate AI into all our sales processes, into all our support processes, so that the customer-facing folks, when they are accustomed to this, they are able to talk to customers more confidently. We've run a lot of experiments internally. We found areas that work, and more importantly, areas that don't work with a lot of confidence, and that conviction helps us ship this to customers. Now, with customers, we're doing some hand-holding. There are some customers who have deployed their agents on their own. We built a simple promptable agent studio where you could go just prompt and give an agent that seamlessly work with your system. We have an MCP server that is exposed. So we're opening it up as a platform, but we handheld a lot of enterprise customers to setting up their first agent. One observation that I had is it was not about replacing an existing workflow, right? So here is the workflow that I've been using it for ages. Now I added some agents to it, some part of it to agents, and now it's an agentic workflow. Customers weren't excited about that. They weren't repeatedly using it. But achieving something that was not possible when using a traditional deterministic workflow, achieving something that the customer didn't know was possible, really amplified the usage of agentic wins. And that really helped. That I mean, look, think of it from a customer perspective. On the internet, you go and see, oh, agentic AI is going to change all of that. But for a customer, it's a deterministic workflow that works. And they don't want probabilistic workflows in their ecosystem unless there is a room for that probabilistic mistakes that could happen. So everything has to be traceable, everything has to be verifiable, everything has to be tied to the truth. And of course, it should be value. I mean, I cannot pay my employee $20 an hour and pay an AI agent $40 an hour to get it work. So all that ties context, privacy, and value. Getting in that magic, finding out that niche use cases where agents could really make a difference, really helped.
You've almost survived the interview, but I got a challenging question for you to wrap it. Zoho approaches ethics in a very organic way.
Right.
It's unique to your culture, I think, and that translates into AI around things like privacy, sovereignty, which we didn't talk a lot about, but I did with Raju earlier. All of that. Also, Sridhar during his virtual interview said, "We're not firing anyone."
Yeah.
So these are strong statements that a
Right.
lot of companies have not made.
Right.
I haven't heard that many companies say we're not firing anyone
Yeah.
because of AI. So you have a certain ethical stance, but your customers may not share that. So how do you think about that? To what extent is Zoho responsible or can help customers think through the ethics of AI? To what extent do you leave that to them? How do you see it? It's a hard one.
John, yeah. So I think it comes down to the fundamentals of the company. I mean, we are a 30-year-old company. We've been profitable from day one. We have had a very strong privacy policy. And as more and more companies are going to vibe code, this trust is what differentiates us. This easy to do business is what is going to differentiate us. I mean, we don't have to report quarterly numbers. We can work on long-term projects like databases. I mean, who works on databases these days? It's so boring. But when you put these things to production, so today, about 100% of our workloads go into our own columnar DB. We have a HTAP system that can be accelerated by GPUs with 99% code compatibility. Now, these are boring problems. I mean, people usually see the menu, but these things happen in the kitchen. And then the kitchen is still clean, still basic, still profitable, still healthily growing. So I think at these turbulent times, it is so easy to, rake up valuations, rake up funding, and go beyond your means, live beyond your means. But we have been frugal. From the day we've started, we have seen the dot-com burst. We have seen the internet wave, mobile wave, AI wave. So I'm sure we will ride these. We still have a very, very good understanding of the market. Of course, AI is disrupting a lot of programming. But even that, programming becomes easier, but software becomes hard. The trust is what differentiates all the noise outside with things like AppOS, where we are helping our developers and third-party developers, citizen developers, wipe code within the limits. So we are doing everything to, kind of go through this tide and come out as a single piece. And I think that is what Zoho is built for, all the long-term things that we do. And I'm sure we will come out with flying colors.
So we're out of time, but I do want to say this, my own opinion on this, which is I think that some of what you do around the built-in privacy and sovereignty features that you deliver to customers kind of deliver a certain type of ethical technology into their organizations, at least if they choose to apply it. I think there's room for Zoho to take on some education around that with customers, not to tell them what to do, but to show them how you've done it and show them how some of your flagship customers go about it. Because I think these are powerful tools, and I think they can be misused, not necessarily intentionally, but just because
a misconfiguration or
exactly. So I think for next year I'll be looking for more on that. You're really good at education. You have your own schools.
Yeah,
it'll be really interesting to see if you can help customers navigate that. Absolutely. I realize you can't dictate how they're going to run their businesses, but I think it's interesting to think about how to show them how they can use this to empower employees and not just look at it from that ruthless headcount approach. Anyway, something to be continued next year, but great to talk.
Absolutely, John. I enjoyed the conversation. I didn't know how time flew. Thank you very much for your time.
Yep. Thank you.